Lost a bet. Lost his daughter, now she belongs to a human warrior. The arena was loud, filled with aliens from many species, all screaming and shouting as the blood-soaked sand waited for more. At the center stood Jace, a human warrior, breathing hard, but still standing. He held his sword low, one shoulder bleeding, armor cracked. Across from him lay a huge beast with two heads. Defeated and twitching, silence slowly spread through the arena. Then, roars of shock and disbelief followed. No human had ever won the royal wager match, especially not against a beast trained by the proud and ruthless alien warlord, Varkol of the Drazari. The crowd didn't know whether to cheer or run, but Jay didn't care. He turned to walk away, till the announcer's voice echoed across the sky. By ancient law and wagered bond, the winner shall claim the warlord's offered prize. Jace froze. He remembered now the pre-fight ceremony, the insults, and the challenge. Varkol had stood before thousands and declared, if this soft-fleshed human wins, he may take anything from my house, even my daughter. Everyone had laughed. Even Jace thought it was just prideful boasting. But now, it wasn't a joke. Now it was law. From the royal box above, Varkol stood, face tight with rage. He tried to speak, but the high judge of the arena raised her staff. The wager is binding, she said coldly. Your daughter now belongs to the human. Gasps rang out like lightning. Even Jace's mouth opened slightly. What? He whispered, but no one heard him. Guards brought her forward. Lysera, the daughter of Varkol. She was tall, with sharp golden eyes, long braided silver hair, and the proud armor of her people. She didn't look afraid, not even sad. She looked furious. She walked down the steps like a storm and stopped in front of Jace. I do not belong to you, she said in a cold voice. You may have one, but I am not some prize to be kept. Jace raised his hands, confused and angry. Look, I didn't ask for this, he said. It was your father's bet, not mine. She stared into his eyes for a long moment. You could refuse, she said. You could walk away. The high judge stepped between them. If he refuses the prize, the blood debt is broken, and war will follow, she said flatly. This is not a game, human. Jace looked up at the royal box, where Varkol was burning with silent fury. He knew if he let her go, they'd call him weak, dishonorable, and unworthy. They might kill him just to cover the shame. If he accepted, he'd be seen as a thief of royalty, but protected by the law. He turned back to Lysera, who hadn't looked away. He took a breath, and then said quietly, Then you'll come with me, not as property, not as a slave, but as someone I'll protect. Lysera's jaw tightened, but she didn't speak. She walked past him, toward the exit tunnel, without a word. The crowd parted as the two of them disappeared into the shadows of the arena. Behind them, Varkol crushed a metal cup in his hand. The warlord had lost a battle. And something more. The look in his daughter's eyes before she turned had chilled even him. That night, the alien stars watched silently as a human and an alien warrior walked together, linked not by love, nor trust, but by a gamble that should never have been made. And somewhere deep inside the fortress of Varkol's mind, a new plan was already forming. He would not allow this shame to last. No matter what, the human would pay. But Jace didn't know that yet. He only knew that the warrior walking beside him hated him, and yet, for reasons even she didn't understand, she hadn't tried to run, not yet. And in that silence between them, something had already begun to change. She didn't speak to him for 3 days. Not a single word, not even a glance longer than a heartbeat, and yet she followed, always a few paces behind, her boots leaving silent marks in the dust as they crossed the trade routes of the outer colonies. Jace didn't force her to stay near, didn't tie her hands or issue commands like a master. Instead, he walked like a soldier on patrol, respectful, and always aware of her silence like it was a loaded weapon. At night, she slept with her back against trees or cargo crates, her eyes never fully closed, her dagger always visible, always clean, sharpened, and ready. Once, when a Sandworm slithered too close to their camp. She killed it before he even turned his head. Clean, perfect strike, blood splattering across her face without fear or flinch. And still she didn't say a word. Jace tried once, offered her food in his own bowl, held it out with a nod, but she stared at it like it was poison, then took it without thanks, still not speaking, still burning with quiet hatred, not the kind that exploded, but the kind that froze deep inside the heart, the kind that waited. By the fifth night, he woke up to find her standing above him, blade at his throat, her eyes cold but not shaking. His hand moved toward his sidearm, slow, but she pressed the blade tighter until a thin red line appeared across his neck. "I could kill you right now," she said in a low, calm voice, the first words since the arena. "I could walk away, and no one would chase me." Jace looked at her, not afraid, not even angry, just tired. He had fought beasts, criminals, and monsters in the past, but this was something else. "Then do it," he whispered, "if that's what you really want." Her hand trembled only for a second, but he noticed. She didn't move, didn't speak again, just pulled the blade back and walked into the shadows. The next day, she walked beside him, not behind, still silent. But closer, they reached a supply station on the edge of the Red Canyons, filled with merchants and mercenaries. Many of them stared when they saw her, their eyes filled with hunger and greed. She noticed it too, stiffened, her hand moving to her side. Jace stood in front of her without a word. "Mine," he said flatly to the men staring too long. "Walk away." Some laughed, but none stepped forward, not when they saw the look in his eyes, a look that had nothing to do with ownership and everything to do with protection. That night, she sat across the fire from him and finally spoke again. "Why didn't you let them try?" she asked, her voice curious, bitter. "You could have let them take me. Saved yourself the trouble." Jace looked up from the fire. "Because I don't throw people away," he said, "even when they hate me." She stared at him again, but this time, the firelight didn't just dance in her eyes, it softened them, just a little. The silence returned, but it felt different now, heavier with questions. Neither of them dared ask yet. Later, as they slept, under the alien stars, she rolled slightly closer to the fire, and for the first time, she turned her back not to the night, but to him. And in a galaxy ruled by power and pride, that small act was louder than any words. The desert didn't forgive mistakes, and Lysera made hers the moment she stepped out of camp alone. No weapon, no food, just fury in her heart and sand under her boots. The heat was rising fast, the twin suns baking her skin through her armor. But she didn't stop. She didn't even look back. She had waited until Jace fell asleep, his back against a rock. Exhausted from repairing the old hoverbike they found, she watched his chest rise and fall like a fool's trust slow. Open, unguarded, it disgusted her, but deep down, it also confused her. No master had ever slept so peacefully beside their prize. She walked through the canyons, ignoring the heat warnings blinking on her wrist unit. She wanted distance, escape, silence, but mostly, she wanted to hurt him. She wanted him to wake up and feel the betrayal, to taste the shame she'd been swallowing since the arena. But the desert wasn't part of her plan. It came alive around midday, wind slicing sideways, blinding her with red dust. Her armor's filters clogged within minutes, and her breathing turned shallow, sharp. She stumbled into a dead ravine, tried to climb out, but her limbs were already shaking, her throat dry and closing. Something hissed in the rocks behind her. A long sound, hungry, curious. She turned just in time to see the sand rippled in teeth. Too many of them. The desert worm struck, but not at her. It slammed beside her, circling, testing, playing. She reached for her dagger, but her fingers refused to close. Her vision blurred, colors bending, sky twisting. The heat poison was winning. She collapsed, one hand barely raised, her last breath dry and silent. But it wasn't the end. Hours later, a shadow fell across her body. Heavy boots crunched near her head. Jace knelt down, his eyes narrowed, lips tight with fear and anger. He scooped her up without a word, and the desert worm hissed again from the distance but didn't strike. It knew better. Jace carried her through sandstorms, through nightfall, through pain, his own feet blistered and bleeding, his skin cracked and peeling, but he didn't stop, not even once. By the time he reached a broken outpost with a med unit, he collapsed beside her. Both of them burning with fever. She woke 2 days later in a dusty cot, a blanket over her, and the air, cool from an old fan humming above. She turned her head slowly and there he was, sleeping in a chair nearby, still wearing half his armor, still sunburned, still breathing heavily. She didn't understand, not fully, not yet. But something inside her cracked quietly. She sat up, grabbed a small tin of water from the table, and drank slowly, then stared at his face. No one had ever carried her like that, not even her father. She could have died out there, and he came. For her, no questions, no blame. And now she owed him something far heavier than words. She owed him truth, but for now, she just watched him sleep, and whispered to herself, "Why didn't you leave me?" The message came as a whisper inside a dark tavern, buried under thick smoke and louder lies. "She's alive," said the cloaked alien trader, voice thick with venom, and traveling with the human, just as the stories say, across the table. A red-eyed noble leaned forward, his fingers tapping against a glass of blue fire whiskey. His name was Velron, cousin to Varkle, and just as cruel but far more patient. "She should have slit his throat," Velron hissed, but instead, "She walks beside him." The trader chuckled, low and ugly. "Maybe she likes his company." Velron's hand moved like lightning, one finger flicked, and the trader fell back with a broken neck, silent forever. It was dishonor enough that a Drazori daughter was lost in a wager, but now she was becoming part of a story, and stories were dangerous. Stories made people ask questions, and rebels grew from questions. Velron sent the signal that night, activating sleeper agents across 3 systems. The order was simple: retrieve the girl, kill the human. Jace didn't know any of this, not yet. He and Lysera were camped near a crystal ridge, under a violet sky. He was fixing a busted drone scanner, while she practiced with her twin blades in a dance that looked more like art than war. But Lysera felt it, a chill in the wind that didn't belong, the way animals went quiet, how even the insects hid in the rocks. When night fell, she asked him suddenly, "Do you trust me?" He blinked, looking up from his half-built drone. "With what?" She didn't answer, just stood slowly, scanned the shadows, then vanished into the rocks. Minutes later, 3 figures moved through the camp, silent, fast, weapons ready. Jace was already moving, blaster in hand. But he didn't get the chance to fire. Lysera dropped from above like a ghost, her blades whispering through the air. One attacker fell with a gurgle. Another tried to spin around, but Jace shot him clean in the chest. The third ran, only to be pinned by Lysera's foot and blade at his neck. "Who sent you?" she asked coldly. The alien spat blood and smiled. "Your father's shame burns bright. He wants his daughter back, dead or alive." She didn't blink as she cut his throat. Jace stood nearby, breathing hard, staring at her, not in fear, but in awe. When the silence returned, Lysera turned to him, her voice quiet, low. "There will be more," he nodded. "Then we keep moving." She stepped closer, close enough to see the dust in his hair, the scratch across his cheek. "You could leave me," she said suddenly. "Go somewhere safe." He looked at her, and for the first time, there was heat in his voice. "You think I came this far to leave you now?" Her breath caught, not from surprise, but from the way something inside her wanted to believe him. And just like that, the war wasn't just out there anymore. It was inside her, between loyalty and something terrifyingly close to trust. They crossed into the broken lands, under a sky that rained ash. The world below them cracked and silent. Once home to cities, and now nothing but twisted metal and black glass. Lysera had never walked this far from the Drazari systems before, and each step felt like shedding another layer of the life she once knew. They found an abandoned bunker carved into the rock. The door creaked open like it hadn't moved in years, and inside it smelled of rust, fire, and old fear. Jace cleared the space first, weapon raised, while Lysera silently followed, her eyes scanning every shadow. They didn't speak much anymore, but not out of anger. The silence now was something softer, heavier, something neither wanted to break too easily. Later that night, as Jace adjusted the broken heater and tried to cook rations that tasted like chalk, Lysera stared at the scar across his back. He didn't notice her gaze at first, not until she said, almost like a thought escaping her mouth, "You never asked for me." Jace didn't turn, just kept stirring. "Didn't have to," he said. "I watched your father offer you like a thing, not a person." She leaned against the wall, folding her arms. "Then, why did you accept?" He paused for a long time, then looked up at her with tired eyes. "Because if I hadn't, someone else would have." The words hit her like a silent impact, and suddenly, she remembered the faces of the other warlords watching that fight, faces full of greed, of laughter, of cruel interest, and she realized something that hadn't reached her before. He didn't win her to possess her, he took her to protect her from being taken. Lysera looked away, the sharpness in her chest something unfamiliar and deeply unwelcome. "You confuse me," she said finally. "You act like you have no claim, yet you protect me like I'm yours." Jace's voice was quiet, but steady. "I protect you because no one else did." She walked closer, her boots soft on the concrete, her shadow falling over him now. "What if I chose to leave?" "I wouldn't stop you," he answered, "but I'd still follow, to make sure you're safe." Something cracked in her breath then, not a sob, not a tear, just a shift, a fracture in the cold armor she wore since birth. She knelt across from him, took the rough bowl of food, and for the first time, she ate beside him, not as a captive, not as a burden, as someone choosing to stay, but before that moment could grow roots. An alert blinked red on Jace's wrist motion sensors outside, approaching fast. She didn't ask questions, didn't hesitate. She grabbed her blade. Already moving toward the door, he followed, and together they stepped out into the night as glowing red visors closed in. Their quiet moment had ended. Now came the war. The wind howled through the shattered bones of the old battlefield. Long dead machines half buried in ash and silence. Jace stood at the edge of a broken cliff, his coat torn, one arm hanging limp from the fight, blood soaking into the dirt beneath his boots. Across from him, Varkal's soldiers circled, weapons drawn, helmets painted with war symbols. Their leader stepped forward, a hulking brute named Redek, champion of the Drazari war clans, and cousin to Lysera. "This ends now," Redek growled, voice loud and cruel. "You give her back, human, or we tear you apart and take what belongs to us." Jace didn't move, didn't flinch. Though his body was wrecked from battle after battle, his eyes were clear, burning with something the Drazari never understood. "Will. She doesn't belong to anyone," Jace said quietly, from behind a rusted transport. Lysera stepped out, blade drawn, her armor scratched and scorched, her face streaked with blood, but her chin lifted with unshakable pride. "She belongs to herself," she said, voice like a blade, "and I stand with him." The crowd of soldiers hesitated, some glancing at each other, unsure. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Redek pointed his weapon at her. "You're a traitor to your bloodline. And you," she spat back, "are a coward who hides behind numbers." That was when Jace raised his voice, his breath shallow. "No more hiding," he called out. "I challenge your champion trial by honor blade." Gasps spread through the group like wildfire. Even Redek's face twitched. "That law is ancient," he snapped, "outdated, but still binding." Lysera cut in, stepping beside Jace. "Unless your people no longer care for honor." Redek growled, teeth bared, and tossed his heavy rifle aside. Drawing a massive serrated blade from his back, the circle closed around them. Boots crunching on the cracked stone, weapons lowered, all eyes on the human and the beast. Jace took off his jacket slowly, revealing fresh wounds, bruises, and the old scars of too many fights. He had no bladen, till Lysera stepped forward and offered him hers. He took it without a word, and their fingers touched for just a second. Then the fight began. Steel screamed against steel, sparks lit the air, and each strike felt like thunder. Reddick fought with brute force, slamming down blows that could shatter bones. But Jace moved like a ghost, dipping, dodging, waiting. It was a war of fury versus patience, of rage against resolve. The crowd began to shift, murmurs spreading. The human wasn't falling, he wasn't even slowing down. Then came the final moment. Tredak raised his blade high for a killing strike. But Jace stepped inside the arc, drove Lysera's blade through his ribs, and twisted. The great beast of a warrior dropped to his knees, coughing blood, his helmet rolling off, and eyes wide with disbelief. Jace stepped back, breathing hard, blade hanging at his side, and looked to the soldiers still watching. "I don't want your war," he said, voice low but clear. "I just want her to choose." No one moved for a long time, until finally, one soldier lowered his weapon. Then another, and another. Lysera walked forward, standing beside Jace once more, and in front of her people. In front of the broken laws and burned honor, she spoke without fear. "I choose him," she said, "not as a prize, not as a master, but as my path forward." The desert wind carried her words far beyond the circle of warriors, into the silence of history, waiting to be rewritten. The sun was rising slow and red over the scorched hills when the last of the Drezari ships pulled back into orbit. No shots fired, no words spoken, only silence left behind where war nearly began. The wind carried dust across the battleground. But no blood, not this time. Jace sat against the base of a jagged pillar, his shirt torn, his body aching in every joint, but he was alive, and more than that. He was free. Lysera knelt beside him, her hands rough but careful, as she wrapped a cloth around his shoulder. She didn't speak right away, her breath steady, her fingers moving with quiet purpose. "You don't need to fix me," he whispered, voice hoarse, a tired smile touching his lips. She looked up, her golden eyes calm but burning with something deeper than fire. "I'm not fixing you," she said softly. "I'm choosing to stay." He blinked slowly, unsure if he heard her. "Right? I don't belong to my father anymore," she said, her voice firmer now. "I don't belong to a name, or a caste, or a planet that gambled me away." She reached forward, gently pressing her hand against his chest, right above his heart. "I belong where I am respected, where I can fight for myself, beside someone who sees me." He didn't move, just stared at her, like she'd just changed the rules of the universe. "Then stay," he said quietly, "not because of what we've been through, but because of what comes next." She nodded once, slowly, and leaned her forehead to his, just for a breath, just enough to feel that warmth wasn't a weapon. Later, they stood on the edge of the cliffs, watching the horizon split open with light. Ships flew overhead, carrying the news back to systems far beyond, of a human who didn't conquer, but protected, of a warrior princess who chose her future, not with a sword, but with her own voice. Back on the Drezari homeworld, Varkle received the message, silent and alone. He stared at the image of his daughter beside the human, unchained, unbroken, unafraid. And for the first time in years, the warlord lowered his head, not in defeat, but in strange, quiet acceptance. Stories would be told. They always were. But this one began with a wager that should never have been made, and ended with a choice that rewrote destiny. Together, Jace and Lysera turned from the cliffs and walked forward, not as warrior and prize, but as equals, as something stronger. And behind them, the old world crumbled just a little more, but ahead, something entirely new waited, something they would build together.